Welcome to the Craze in 10 or less. This is a show where I give it to you in 10 minutes or under. And if I don't, I won't. Anyway, Mark Miller's asking for 50% royalty rate to try to save the comic book industry. Everyone's talking about the end of comic book as we know it. What's going on? That's the topic of the day. I'm Sam the Crazy Man Vera. Stop acting up. Let's get it. All right. It's been a while. It's been a long time, and I'm back. So, juggling a lot of hats. Anyway, or juggling a lot of balls, right? I don't understand. Whatever it is, I'm juggling. So lately, if you're in the comic book game, you've seen it. It's been popping up on your social feeds. Comics on a decline, comic book stores closing, independent comic book companies filing bankruptcy, closing up offices in California. A lot of things happening, right? Restructuring, all that stuff. And then recently, Mark Miller went on to challenge the industry and say, you know what, the reason why it's failing, it's because we're not paying the rates that I was being paid back in the day. So apparently he was paid about $1,000 a page. $1,000 a page, 24 pages, 24 G's, man, plus royalties. Man, I would have been retired by now. Anyway, man, that sounds sweet. Think about that for a second. Anyway, now it's around $90 a page with a 2% royalty rate if you sell 50,000 units or more. 2% if you sell 50,000 units or more. And this is the reason why there's a mass exodus from creators leaving the big two and the companies and going and try to make it on their own and using platforms like crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Crowdfunder, all of them to try to make their way and try to make some money because they're not doing it. And then on the second hand, there's been a steady decline in comic book sales when it comes to floppies, right? There's no magic happening in comic shops with regards to comics. There is magic happening. There's a gathering happening, which infiltrated the comic shops and they're taking over a percentage of the business. But when it comes to comics as a whole, because the industry has got caught up in what's happening in society and try to implement all these things and try to be socially relevant and sensitive and all these other things, the art of imagination is slipping away. So people are like, I don't want to go read a comic about what I'm seeing today. I want to read a comic about something that's just impossible to fathom, like radioactive boy, got bit by a radioactive spider, right? Or this alien crash lands on Earth and he becomes Superman, and this regular guy who just happens to be a billionaire and has all this money who's become this vigilante. That allows your mind to go and explore, right? So it's a lot of topics, right? And I can tell you this from firsthand experience. I was at an LCS. I was doing a book signing at a comic book shop. And I was asking, because when I looked at the footprint of the store, and this is one of multiple stores that they own throughout Texas, and each of them seemed to be the same way. I think it was about 50 to 60% of their store was dedicated to tabletop gamers. Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, right? And a small percentage of the store was dedicated to comic books, and another percentage of the store was dedicated to collectibles, whether it's action figures or trading cards or whatever it was non-comic related. And it was very eye-opening for me to see what was happening. So I asked one of the managers, and they said, "Hey, how do you make your business if 60% of your store is just tables?" And basically he said, "Well, Magic the Gathering represents 40% of our revenue. Just Magic the Gathering, not Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games. 40% of the store's revenue comes from that. Another 20 to 30%. Another 20 to 30% of their revenue comes from collectibles, Funko Pops, action figures, all these other things, whatever." So they staged their stores in a way because only 18% of their revenue comes from comic book sales. And of that 18%, I think about it was like 12% was from graphic novels versus floppies, right? So you think about it. A traditional comic book store that I grew up with, where 80% was dedicated to comics and 20% to collectibles, it switched gears, right? And what they do is they let people come and um, occupy the tables for free because they know that the tabletop gamers, are going to buy the figurines and the extra dice and the cards and all that stuff, and they sell snacks. So they're going to buy snacks and they're going to be there for hours. They're going to bring their friends, and it's going to be a big social gathering, and that's how they generate their revenue. So we have two battles, right? Earnings and market share. Earnings and market share. Which fight do we pick first? Because as long as, when you look at it, here's another cool fact that you may not have considered. 10% of comic book sales globally comes from independents. 10%. So of 100% of just strictly comics, 100%, because Marvel dominates it. But I think about now, Marvel has like a 37% market share in the industry, and I think Marvel Comics is 34%, DC Comics is 27%, Image takes about 10.9%. Then you got Boom at under 5%, you got Dark Horse under 5%, and then everybody else just starts falling below, right? I think Seven Seas is 0.07. And then to all others, so that's all others, that's alternative independent comics, all others in that category is 10% of the market share of a $7 billion market share, global market share. So that's another caveat, right? So comics is forecasted to grow over time, not decrease. So when you hear all this craziness about what's happening, they're forecasting comics to grow globally. Now, there may be an opportunity in the US, but globally, there's an expectation that's going to grow over time. Now, what does that mean for us? I think what happens is, I think the retailers that have closed never capitalized on the trend. It's unfortunate, but you have to, right? It's like the Blockbuster story. If you don't capitalize on what's happening, people were renting digital. People wanted to deliver to their homes. All these things that they weren't doing, that Amazon started doing or Netflix started doing. And so Blockbuster fell to the wayside. So some of the comic stores that you see that are expanding, who love comics, but they also are business owners. They have to make sure that they protect the bottom line to keep their employees paid, to keep the market going. So they had to revisit the footprint and redesign their floor space to make certain that what the market's telling us the store represents. So if they've seen a shift, you can't have a store that's 100% comics. It's not going to make money. You need a store that has a good balance. So if you know that Magic the Gathering itself is a $1.1 billion industry and growing fast, then you have D&D and all the other tabletop games, right? You want a portion of that, and you want that in your location. If you know Funko Pops has a certain market share, you want to make sure that you've allocated the same amount of space. So your store has to be designed to represent what's happening in the market. And you have to be able to pivot when it changes. So what does that mean for us? I don't know. I don't have the answers. What do you think? Do you think 50% royalties is going to change the game with the big two? So not if they're creating the same types of comics. You need to change up the game. The comics are getting stale, right? You don't hear this hysteria about the stories or the writers or whatever. There's no rock star in comics right now. And the rock star doesn't have to be the person, it has to be the product, right? So what's the attraction? So will that help? I think if you say, we're not going to give you page rates, but we're going to give you 50% royalties, you have to sell 60,000 units and you're going to get paid whatever it is. Now, the flip side of the question is, are our hands untied to be able to tell the stories that we want to tell? Or we're going to have somebody in a suit constantly micromanaging and editing the stories, right? Because what's in the market's not really working. And I'm not making a blanket statement. It's just not the same as it was back in the days. We're in the valley, right? back in the heydays of comics, we were on the peak, right? So what's it going to do, and what does that mean for independence? Independence, I don't know. Um, there's a lot of talks about creating another Image, and there are veteran comic creators that are forming their own alliance and all this other stuff. I just think that you have to have a compelling story. What does that mean? Don't know. Right? The market will tell you what that means. But I can tell you this, that science fiction is the number one genre in comics right now. Right? So science fiction, if you are a sci-fi buff and that's your alley, this is an opportunity to capitalize on the movement. This is the top trending genre right now in comics. Right? Everyone's talking about how manga is dominating and taking over. Look, let's talk about comics as itself and the genre that's going on. There's an opportunity here to really make some really good money. There's an opportunity here to do some really big things, meaningful things. But it all depends on your perspective and your point of view, right? And I did have that article up a minute ago about genres, and I just can't seem to find it. But anyway, number one genre, sci-fi. Is 50% royalty enough to change the game? I don't know. Should there be like a flat rate plus 50% royalty? Yeah, I think so. Right? I think so. I think if you're gonna go, the page rates are $1,000. It used to be $1,000. Is dropped to as low as $90. Maybe it's $100 a page rate, or $50 if you can't afford it, and with 50% royalty. That's going to inspire and get the creative team really committed to telling a story that the fans want. And I'm talking about true comic book fans. I'm not talking about the ones who are just jumping in because of clickbait, right? We hit on a nerve because something that's happening in the world, whatever. I'm talking about true comic fans that love comics, love to escape, love the art of storytelling, love the art of imagination. What are we going to do to hit that nerve? Keep telling stories, keep telling great stories. It's all a matter of perspective. One person will say something's great, another person will say it sucks, right? But we need to find some sort of rhythm and get our footing back in order to save or to keep, stop the bleeding, not save the comic book industry, because all of the professionals are forecasting growth. As long as you have movie tie-ins, they just got to capitalize on it, right? There's got to be something where you buy the comic book and you get and you decipher a code. You go to the website. They got to make it like a full journey, right? Go to the comic store, get the comic book. In the comic book, there's a code. Go to the website, right? Lead you to another code. You got to decipher the code that's going to unlock a free ticket to the opening screening of a movie. Right? How do we make it fun? Right? How do we make it fun? What are your thoughts? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Give me your thumbs up if you like this episode. Subscribe, like, share with a friend. Again, I'm an independent comic book creator who has an Indiegogo right now that's really suffering, and I need your help. So if you like my show and you like what I do and you like my art, hey, support my book. Get a copy for yourself. Give it as a gift. Whatever you do, I appreciate you. With that said, I'm Sam the Crazy Man Vera. This is the Craze and Tenor List. You guys have a blessed day. Peace.